Hello, everyone. Welcome to a joint webinar between DigitSec and UST. We've had a lot of people register for this, so I know the idea of this is to be a knowledge sharing webinar. We have some great speakers today, Mira from UST, who is a Salesforce MVP, and Waqas Nazir, who is the CEO of DigitSec, to talk about how to secure your Salesforce environment more correctly and with more diligence than maybe some of you are doing today. So we hope you find this session very useful for you. I'll just hand it over to Prasanth to say a few words from UST. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you're in. Thank you for joining this webinar. We hope this will be of immense value and of interest to all of you in the Salesforce ecosystem. We all are Salesforce evangelists, so it's wonderful to have you all here. We have UST is a Salesforce gold level or crest level, as we call it now, system integrator partner of Salesforce. And we have partnered with DigitSec to bring you this webinar. We have had a number of Salesforce ecosystem partnerships, but with a 500 people practice, we like to focus on some of the key ones like DigitSec to bring to you the state-of-art and most value-adding partner offerings in the Salesforce space for all of you. So without much further ado, I'll hand it over to Mira and Waqas, the two key people on the webinar today. Enjoy the show, and we look forward to good interactive talks and discussions post this webinar as well. Thank you all once again for joining. Over to you, Mira.
Thank you so much, President and Andy, for the introduction. So, like President mentioned, UST is having around 15 years of experience in supporting many large Salesforce instances for multiple customers in various Salesforce platforms. We engage with customers in multiple ways, which includes ongoing development and support, new Salesforce instance implementation, new cloud feature implementation, new feature implementation, and also org analysis to suggest areas of improvement. As part of org analysis, we assess multiple aspects of current implementation of an instance, like governance limits related issues, where we have seen many large org implementations facing issues like SOCL 101, DML limit, or batch execution limit, because of which specific transactions are failing. Since Salesforce is coming up with innovative integration approaches, it is very important for us to assess our existing framework and upgrade it with latest features for better performance and easy maintainability also. Many times we have seen most of the performance and governor limits related issues faced by many instances are because of bad framework, bad trigger framework, and not following development best practices. Also, components from deprecated features can also cause performance and maintenance related issues in the system. So it's critical to remove those from the system. We also help to identify components causing performance issues. In addition to this, a good monitoring and exception handling mechanism is also equally important to maintain good health of an org. So we assess and suggest better framework to handle this. And security violation come on top of all these issues. Later, Waqas will be giving more insights into what damage security violations can cause to an org, and suggest probably improvement ideas to fix each of the identified issue. In addition to performing security review as part of an org analysis, during the development process also, we will be performing static code analysis to make sure we are following all coding best practices. And this checking is also part of CICD process to make sure components are not getting deployed in case of any critical violation. If you are an ISV partner, you know that passing Salesforce security review is critical phase of App Exchange listing. And can we move to next slide? Yeah, but in the past, we have faced multiple challenges with the internal security review process. Like many of the available tools supports code scanning only. If you need to do scanning on the configurable components, it's not that much easy. And most of them are generic scanning tools also. If we need to customize it for Salesforce specific rules, we might end up in creating our own rules. Because of all this reason, most of the time for security scanning, a single tool is not sufficient. And if we need to perform org analysis, most of the time we need to download components, store in your local system, then perform the analysis. But for large implementations, it's very difficult to download and perform or execute it locally. Plugging into CICD process is also not simple with most of the existing tool. Like you might end up in creating or writing complex script logic to handle this. And if you got an old org, it's difficult to find out unused or duplicated certificates and static resources also, because most of the time we have seen as part of static resources, you have got old versions of JavaScript or Bootstrap framework, which can affect your security. Yes, Sandy.
Hello, everyone. Andy from the DigitSec side here with our first of 2 polling questions. I will go ahead and launch it. And I would ask that you please answer, are you currently doing any security scanning of your Salesforce environment? I'll give everyone a couple of seconds to be able to answer. You should see the screen in front of you. And I can already see the answers coming through. At the end of the poll, I'll go ahead and share, so that way we can see where everyone lies. We'll take another 5 seconds here. Okay. And here we can see the results. We can see that it's split, reinforcing the need for security scanning of your Salesforce environment.
Thank you, Auntie. So I would like to ask something to Vakas. So Salesforce as a platform has got its own features to handle Salesforce security. Then as a customer or as an implementation partner, why we need to take care of security?
Thank you, Mira. That's a great question. And I think that's a very important question to answer from a security perspective. We've seen that a lot of issues come when this understanding does not exist between somebody who's consuming a platform like Salesforce and the provider, which is Salesforce in this instance. So Salesforce has a shared security model, which basically means that between Salesforce and the customer that who's using Salesforce is a joint responsibility to make sure that their data is secure. And this is basically laid out in Salesforce Security Guide, which basically says that anytime you add any customization to your environment or make changes to your environment, you as a user are responsible to make sure that they are secure. So unless this understanding exists, it is very hard for any user of Salesforce to secure their environment. Next slide, please. So if you look at what a SaaS provider or Salesforce in this instance is responsible for versus you as a customer or versus we as customers are responsible for, it is laid out in this easy to understand graphic. Salesforce as a provider is responsible to make sure that the network is secure, the operating system that in which your application is going to run is secure, there are no issues with the physical hosts, the data center is secure, and the application that is built by Salesforce out of the box is secure. But you as a customer or we as customers are responsible for making sure that when we put our data into Salesforce, it is actually secure from a perspective of not being able to be executed or accessed by malicious users and things of that nature. When we add data to Salesforce, we are responsible to make sure that we have all the controls in place to make sure that data access is compliant. When we start writing custom code or adding new integrations within the Salesforce environment, we as consumers are responsible to make sure that our code is secure and we're not adding any vulnerabilities into the environment. We as customers are responsible for making sure that the identity provider that we're using, the identity settings that we're using, the session settings we're using are secure. And then lastly, we as consumers of an environment are ultimately responsible for our data that we put into the environment. And if we make any mistakes, we will be ultimately responsible for causing that harm within our orgs. Next slide, please. So if you look at the general state of security, we will understand what's happening in the world generally. We find that a lot of exploits today are just happening for a reason of committing crime and profiting from someone's vulnerability. So a lot of the attacks now are geared towards a financial incentive. Average data breach cost in the US can be up to $8 million. We've seen that ransomware attacks are up by 150% last year, and it is projected to double this year. And now we have these services which are basically ransomware as a service, where you actually don't need to create ransomware. You can just rent it for as low as $39. And sometimes you don't even need to pay anything. You can just use the ransomware, and the creator of the ransomware gets a cut once you get paid. We know that the cybercrime industry is $3 trillion, and it is projected to grow. We also know that there are sometimes ransoms being paid which don't make the news. For example, sometimes as low as $40,000 could be paid, and it never makes the news because it's not a big enough impact. But we get to know of all the millions of dollars which get paid as ransom. Hackers are becoming very innovative. They're starting to do which is called double extortion. So they will not only take your data locally, but also encrypt your data as in the backup, and then threaten you to release that data so that you get compliance fines on top of it. Now, interestingly, Salesforce contains a lot of PII. So it's a very attractive target for hackers and malicious users. And we know that if you disclose PII and it's a mistake on your part, your fine can be 4% of a company's revenue. So as things are progressing, as Salesforce is becoming more pervasive, the security of that environment is very important. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mira to talk about what are some of the common threats that we see with Salesforce implementations.
Sure. Thank you, Vikas. So in this slide, let us see some common security threats that we have seen in Salesforce implementations in the past. One of the main security threats is authorization or access bypass. It can be because of multiple reasons. We have listed a few here, like Apex class with sharing keyword. In this case, current user access is bypassed and code will be getting executed in system context, and all records will get processed, violating current user access. We can see a use case related to this later. Second is no access check before DML operations. If you are not checking current user permission before doing insert, update, or delete permission inside an Apex class, there are high chances that users who actually does not have access to perform an operation can still perform that using Apex. That will end up in serious security related issues. When you're executing an SQL query, there is a Salesforce practice that you should utilize with security enforced keyword as part of the query. It is to make sure current user field level security and object level access is taken care during query. If you're not following this, users will get access to additional field data. Storing sensitive data in code is also a serious threat. We have seen many times people hard coding sensitive information like passwords to connect to an external system or access tokens, encryption keys, or even personally identified information as part of Apex code. Anyone who is getting access to your code base can retrieve this kind of information very easily. Passing sensitive information through URL is also a serious threat, and hackers will be able to easily fetch this kind of information. SOQL injection is another kind of threat. This is caused by dynamic SOQL or SOS cell that accepts user inputs. This is again a very common serious vulnerability that can happen with dynamic queries where user inputs are not getting validated. And users can input any kind of string that can modify the SOQL statement and trick the application into performing unintended commands. Usage of all JavaScript or Bootstrap libraries also will cause issue to your system because there might be known issues with these libraries. And if we use this still as part of your application, there are high chances of security threats. Another threat is related to external attacks. If you have got community or Experience Cloud implementation, guest users, partner users, or customer users getting additional data access in the system because of misconfiguration or code issue. This is more critical than internal threat because external facing data is very sensitive. Later, we will see a use case related to this one also. Next slide, please.
Hello, everyone. Andy here again for your second of 2 polling questions here. Given all the threats that Waqas and Mira have discussed, we'd like to ask, do you have security measures in place to protect yourself against these common security threats? I'll give everyone a couple of seconds here to answer, and then we can all take a look at the results after. I'm seeing the answers coming in. I'll give everyone about another 5 seconds. And we'll go ahead and close the poll, and I'll share the results. That is good to see that over half of you do have measures, but there's still some that need to add additional protection. Thank you.
Okay. So, Waqas, since you have done analysis of multiple Salesforce instances for this kind of security threats, it will be good to see some statistics around this.
Sure, thanks, Mira. So as Mira mentioned, some of the common threats that exist within Salesforce implementation, we also see that there's a trend in our analysis of hundreds of scans that have come through our platform. We see that the most common threat is around authorization, which is basically not enforcing proper permissions on code. And 47% of the time, this is the type of vulnerability we're seeing. It stems from the fact that people don't understand that Salesforce code runs with system permissions by default, and developers need to enforce access checks and things of that nature. The second most common thing that we find is a lot of misconfigurations with deployments, and that's roughly 18% of the issues we find deal with common security misconfigurations, which are easy to fix, but are very critical from a security perspective. We also see a lot of third-party libraries within environments. This is your static resources, which are not updated or are being used with components like Bootstrap and jQuery, which have known exploits. So attackers know how to exploit those environments by just using those publicly available exploits. So 10% of the time we see that. We also see cross-site scripting pretty commonly, roughly 8% of the time. SOQL injection, which is a very interesting attack, is seen about 4% of the time. Data leak is about 3% of the time we see this, although this is less in percentage, but it could be very critical from a security perspective. So if you're leaking personal information or financial information or health-based information from this, it can cause a serious harm to your company. And then there's some other issues like cross-site request forgery, having hardcore secrets, escalation of privileges, and weak cryptography, and open redirects. And they're roughly about 2% of the time we'll see these exploits. So interestingly, we'll walk you through a couple of real-life threat scenarios, and Mira will narrate over them. The first one deals with how an internal malicious user or an attacker would attack a Salesforce deployment. And then the second one Mira will share would be from an external standpoint, how an attacker could potentially gain more access to your Salesforce data. So with that, Mira, why don't you walk us through these threat vectors?
Sure, Vakas. So in this use case, we can see how we can get access violation if proper security check is not happening within your Apex code. So here you can see I have got a home page component which is created based utilizing LWC. Here the user will be able to select a particular account, and once the account is selected, I will be getting a screen to create a new contact under that particular account. I guess the record. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so you can see once the account is selected, user will be getting a screen where he will be able to enter information to create a new contact. This is an internal admin user, so definitely he is having full access in the system, and he will be able to successfully create a new record. He's entering all the required information like first name, last name, email, and phone number. Once the data is entered, user will be able to click on create contact, and we will be getting a pop-up which says contact creation is success or if it is failure. Okay, here you can see the contact got created successfully. Since this is an admin user, there is no issue with the execution. Now, let us see another user called asset user, which belongs to a custom profile called asset management profile. And if we open this profile, under the access for custom or standard objects, we can see that for contact, this user or this profile has got just read permission, meaning he will not be able to create, update, or delete contact records. Now, in another window, I have logged in as this particular asset user. And
apologies for that. The video seemed to have restarted. Is this the right place, Mira?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and restart.
Okay. Yeah, this is the asset user. And on the home page for this user also, we will be able to see the same component. In reality, this component should not be visible for this particular user, but this can be because of a configuration issue. The component is still visible for asset management user. Now let us see what is happening when he is selecting an account and trying to create a new contact. Since he is not having permission at profile level, what we will be expecting, the creation should be a failure. But in our scenario, the Apex is not properly validating the access of current user. In that case, let us see what is happening once he is clicking on create contact. You can see the contact got created successfully, irrespective of he is not having access at the profile level. And we can go and verify this at the account level. And you can see that the contact got created successfully and it is visible under that particular account. So this is a serious internal security threat. A user was able to create a contact even if he is not having access to create that. Now we can see an external scenario also. I have got a partner account created here called Epic partner account. And as part of this partner account, I have got a contact also here called Epic partner. And we have created an experience site for partners. It's basically a partner community where this particular contact will be able to log in. For that, let us go to this particular contact detail page. And you can see a login to experience as user option at the top. Using that option, let us log in to the portal. This is the site created for partners. And on the home screen, again, you can see a custom component here. This is created utilizing Visualforce, where user will be able to search for a contact utilizing or entering the last name. Since this is a partner user, as per the configuration, he should be able to see only contacts belongs to his partner account. But here you can see once we do the search, he is able to see contacts even from the internal accounts, which is a serious access violation because he is getting additional data access here. Now, let us perform another search where user is trying to modify the query itself. Instead of last name, he is trying to enter a complex string where first name like Smith, or active equal to no, or email like Gmail, or first name like John, meaning a combination of search filtering he is trying to enter here. Let us see what is going to happen. If you are properly validating the input string, this query should not get executed and it should not give us any result. But if you are not validating the input string, you can see you will be getting all the records based on the user entered criteria. You can see records with domain as Gmail, users or contacts with active equal to no, even with first name as John. So all the criteria is getting satisfied and you will be able to see the record. This is called SOQL injection, where user will be able to modify the string. And if you are not properly validating, he is going to get additional data access or additional data filtering option. Yeah. And can we move to next slide? So since we have seen this internal and external threats, I would like to ask Vakas, like how DigitSec will be able to identify this kind of issues.
Thanks, Mira. So one of the challenges, as Mira mentioned, is making sure that when you're deploying custom code or custom components, you're not exposing your data to malicious users, whether they're internal or external. And a challenge exists on how to do this at scale. When you have multiple developers writing code all the time, making a lot of releases with the proliferation of DevOps tool, many DevOps tools, we find that the velocity of deployments has increased. So there's more changes happening in a shorter amount of time. So our product is designed to find these bugs as developers are making these changes, as they're pushing things through their pipeline. And here's an example of the first issue that Mira shared, where a piece of code is not validating a user's permissions before inserting a record, a contact type record. And our product basically gives you a walkthrough of how this class gets initiated, what is the function that is being called, what are the parameters coming into this function, and where is the actual DML statement happening. So it's very easy for a developer or an architect to look at this and see this is actually an issue that they should fix prior to releasing this into production. An easy way of identifying this at scale with your DevOps practice. Next, we will look at the second issue that Mira shared, which was in relation to an external threat, where not only just the user validation, permission validation is not happening, but also there's a SOQL injection issue. So since our product has the ability to look at a Salesforce environment within its deployment context, we can actually tell that, hey, this controller has a SOQL injection, it's actually exposed as well. So you can see there's two screens. One screen is basically walking you through the SOQL injection issue with a detailed trace of the class, the method, and where the input is coming from, and then where it's actually getting executed as a SOQL statement and where the injection is. But also on the bottom right, you see there's a small screenshot which basically shows that this particular controller is exposed to the guest user profile. So coupling these two things, you can see that this is actually an external SOQL injection. So now you can actually triage it at a higher severity, at a critical severity, and fix it. So we as a platform allow companies to look at their security holistically. And we do this by doing 4 key things. Most solutions focus on one or the other, and they're not able to give you a complete, accurate picture of your security posture for Salesforce. Our 4-step process includes reviewing the source code, looking at the things that we find in the source code, to then feed into our runtime analysis, which is basically simulating a hacker to validate whether the things that we found in the source code analysis are actually exploitable or not, much like the way Mira demonstrated how a malicious user can try to get more data. So the second step is basically validating our findings that we find from the source code analysis and also simulating a malicious attacker. Then we look at all the static resources within a Salesforce environment, whether they are part of your local development or remotely referenced, and we identify known vulnerabilities with that. And then the last thing that we do is look at the configuration of the environment to give you the overall threat picture, what's exposed, what's not exposed, what's the real risk behind a bug, and that gives you perspective on what needs to be fixed and triaged. All this is done in the cloud, and it's efficient and it can scale as you scale your environment. We reduce false positives by using our runtime analysis. So there's accurate findings out of the process, and then we allow you to be plugged in to your DevOps platforms, VS Code, in your CICD, and our findings have detailed recommendations on how to go about fixing those things. So with that, I'd like Smitha to talk about some of the ways that we can help companies secure their environments and keep them secure as they make changes through their life cycle.
Thank you, Vikas. This is the UST offering powered by DigitSec S4 for Salesforce. As you can see on the slide, we offer a variety of options to engage. For more details, please email us at the address given below, and we will get in touch with you right away to discuss your specific needs. And now Andy will take us through to the Q&A segment of the webinar. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Smitha. So we do have some questions that came through. And again, if anyone has any questions on anything in the presentation, please use the Q&A button down there at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We'll be happy to answer. I will be asking these for Wakas and Mira to answer. And then with the first question being, what is PII?
Okay. So PII, Wakas will be able to add more, but it's basically personally identifiable information, anything that will be able to, any data element using by which we will be able to identify a particular person in the system. It's called PII. It can be a person's name, it can be a unique identifier, or it can be anything associated with that user. Wakas, would you like to add anything?
No, I think you did that very well, Mira. So any piece of element that could be used to uniquely identify an individual, whether that's a phone number, an email address, and anything of that nature, a financial record or a health record, is a part of the PII.
Thank you both. Next question, I think I can answer this one. Will we get a recording of the session? Absolutely. Everyone, every registrant, whether they attended or not, will be able to get a recording of the session by next week. Our next question is, for a small or mid-sized company, how often should a security scan be done? Once a week, once a quarter, annually?
That's a great question. So I think it depends on the amount of changes that they're making in that environment. Ideally, they should enable security all the time because there are new exploits coming out regularly in the public space. There are new bugs being reported publicly. So even though you may not be making changes, the world around you may be changing. So it's a good practice to place controls in an environment which are available all the time. So continuous security is the best option. So enabling your environment to be looked at daily should be the best practice, or whenever there are new changes being made. So we recommend that security be enabled all the time, and it shouldn't be done like at one point in time, because you can do it today and tomorrow you may be vulnerable again.
Thank you. The next question is, does DigitSec have external software which scans these loopholes? And I imagine they are talking about the security threats.
So our platform is available externally. It is a cloud-based service, and it can be utilized by anyone who wants to use it. We also offer a trial where companies can come and do a quick assessment on their own time and get a high level of understanding of the number of issues that may exist within the environment. And then they can engage with us and look at the details of those findings and things of that nature. So the tool that we have is a cloud-based service, which is available externally.
Thank you, Waqas. All right, some more questions coming through. Next question is, I have a code analysis tool, including PMD and Salesforce Shield in my org. What extra features can S4 give to aid security?
That's a great question. So as I shared, our approach to security is that we want to give you accurate understanding of your environment. So we look at not just the code, like a static code analysis. We actually simulate an attacker, like an actual malicious user in an automated fashion, trying to exploit the issues that we found through our code analysis. So not only do we do code analysis, we actually verify those bugs through that analysis, which no other platform does. On top of that, we also look at third-party risk, which code analysis tools don't do, including PMD doesn't do that. And you can have an understanding of what's the third-party risk within my Salesforce and deployment. And then we look at configuration, which can help verify the things that you've put in place from a Salesforce Shield perspective, that you're actually not missing out anything. So think of us as an assessment tool that can verify whether you've implemented controls accurately within your environment or not. So the benefit of using us is that we give you a sort of a complete threat picture of your Salesforce environment, and then you can refine your deployment, your implementation with Shield to make sure you're catching the right issues within your event monitoring and things of that nature. And it enhances your usage of that product as well. And we, of course, do much more than code analysis, as I've shared.
Thank you, Waqas. The next question we have is, can we have some scenario explained for usage of old JavaScript/Bootstrap libraries?
Mira, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure, Waqas. So what we have noticed as part of old Visualforce code, or even as part of custom code, we have seen people are utilizing very old JavaScript libraries. And there are known vulnerabilities with this kind of old JavaScript or Bootstrap libraries in this. That's what we have seen in the past. So like some operations or some kind of checking which is available with the latest version is not supported in the old version. So those kind of issues, if exist with old libraries, you can expect that kind of, you might be seeing those kind of issues when you are doing specific operations. Waqas, if you would like to add something else, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I think in those cases, if you can isolate the vulnerabilities, so if there is absolutely no way of updating your code to work with the new libraries, then there's an approach of like isolating the vulnerable code, which is a bit more involved exercise by the developer to go at like, what are the issues with this old library? And actually, am I vulnerable to those? Can somebody actually exploit it? So it may be a case that you are able to find a use case where it's not exploitable, and in that case, you can absorb that risk. But if it is exploitable, then you have to make the case that we should put this on the roadmap and remove this old library from our development. We may have to make more changes in our existing code base, but that's the right thing to do for the long run.
Thank you both. And now our final question that we have here is, we don't modify our Salesforce code or configs, but we have downloaded apps from App Exchange. Do we still need to worry about security, or is SFDC responsible for our security?
So Salesforce does a great job of making sure that the applications that they publish on AppExchange go through a security review process. They have this process defined, and those who've gone through it, and they know that it's a very thorough process. It is always good to have some level of assurance on your platform. We always recommend that there's no harm in assessing your environment, even though you think that you have everything covered. If you have everything covered, our tool would tell you, thumbs up, you're in good shape. But if you have something missing from the picture, it will identify it. So there's always no harm in assessing your environment from a security perspective and making sure that you're doing the right things. So this question would become easier for you to answer, that we don't make any changes and we only install a few things, but now we've actually tested using a tool and we know actually we don't have any exposure. So this will answer it for yourself, and an easy way of doing it is just using the assessment and finding out if there are any exposures.
Thank you, Akash. And I spoke too soon before. Some further questions have come through. The next one is, how easy is it to integrate your solution with CICD tools? And are there any recommended CICD tools for this as well?
So the product itself can be integrated into all the Git repositories. We support all Git repositories, GitHub, Azure DevOps, Bitbucket, and GitLab. We also have integrations for Jenkins. We have an integration with Copado, and it can be utilized by other custom CI/CD environments. We expose a public API where developers can write their own tooling around it. But we've spent a lot of time making sure that our tool is integrated into the CI/CD pipeline. And we can point you to our help site to look into what are the integrations look like and how easy it is to consume within a CI/CD pipeline.
Perfect. Thank you, Akash. And one more here. Does the tool provide solution approaches along with identifying the issues?
Yes, absolutely. So we provide detailed recommendations on how to go about fixing the issue. We also talk about why this issue came up, and it can give a developer or an admin the perspective into how this come about within their environment. So they get the background and then also the recommendations on how to fix it.
Thank you, Akash. One more here. What are CVEs, and can they change my Salesforce security posture even if we don't modify our org?
It does. So CVEs are common vulnerabilities and exposures. There's a list maintained by NIST, which documents publicly disclosed vulnerabilities. And in the Salesforce context, this is all your static resources. Interestingly, we've seen, even really secure environments have an insecure library creating a lot of vulnerabilities within the orgs. So it's important to be always checking the current posture of your environment, because CVEs keep popping up every day or every month, depending upon the technology. And we see that with static resources as well, like BigQuery, Bootstrap, and Angular, and things like that.
Perfect. Thank you, Akash. And one final one here. Do we have categories listed within issues like high, medium, or low?
Yes. Yep. So we categorize everything based on our understanding of the environment, but a customer also has the ability to change whether we think something is high risk. They may think it's critical. They can change it to critical, or something we think is critical, they may change it to high, depending upon their scenario. So we provide some flexibility with that.
Great, and that does it for the questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Great questions, and thank you, Mira and Waqas, for answering those.
Yes, thanks everyone for attending. Thanks for our hosts, and we look forward to speaking to any of you that might be interested in learning more about UST's services built around DigitSec's S4 product. And we hope that you'll join us again in the future for future informational webinar such as this. Thank you very much.